are welcome to my channel, Elena Today. If you are new here, my name is Elena, and I'm American who lives in Calcutta, India, and I like to make videos about my everyday life. So currently I'm in the United States and visiting my family. And in my previous video, I have been getting questions or been getting asked questions about the background behind me. And so I thought today would be a great opportunity to talk to you guys about one of my all-time favorite hobbies. So I love playing board games, and I've been playing board games since 2015. I actually got interested in playing board games from my brother-in-law, Lance, who will be joining us here a little later in the video. So since living in India for the past 2 years, unfortunately I haven't had an opportunity to play because one, I've either not been able to find any good board games in India, or two, my husband is not very big into playing board games. I'm trying to get him to play, but we'll see. So we're going to go ahead now, and I'm just going to have my brother-in-law come in and kind of answer some common questions that you guys might have about board games. All right, guys, so here's Lance. And so I will be looking on my phone. I have a couple of questions here that I would like to ask him. And so the first question that I would like to ask you is, what got you into board gaming?
Back in 2015, I met my partner, which is Elena's sister, and we started to play a game called Betrayal on House on Haunted Hill, and that game was my first strategy board game experience, and I played it and I just fell instantly in love with it. I used to play a lot of video games and play a lot of multiplayer online, and what I found was that the board games brought something that video games couldn't bring to me for the table, which was the socialization, in-person socialization. Because really online, when you're playing online games, things can get toxic. Being in person, socializing with people, it's a lot of fun, and it just connected to me in so many different levels. I got to use my brain, got to think, got to have good tactics and strategies, and then I got to socialize with the people around me, which was the number one thing. So really from that point on, I started watching the Dice Tower, which is a online video reviewer, and I just started watching all these different games that these guys were playing, and I was like, wow, this whole world existed and had been existing for the last 10 years really in the United States, and I was like, I need to get aboard this train because this is a really cool hobby.
All right, so next question I have for you. So what is the difference between classic board games like Snakes and Ladders or Monopoly versus these designer board games that we play?
So designer board games started in Germany, and that's where they first came into the scene as Euro games, is what they're known, or designer games. And basically they're called designer games because the designer's name is written on the front of the box. And they were Euro because, again, they all originated from Europe, in Germany, France, Britain, and then steadily over time they've just integrated to the United States, which United States games from us are called Ameritrash, and they've hybrided it together to create games that are Ameritrash and Euro games together. Euro games are basically games that are based on heist tactics and strategy. Whereas classic games like Monopoly, Chutes and Ladders, Sorry, those are just really centered for kids and just doing something fun for an hour. But mostly the demographic for kids. Our games, the designer games, are mainly for 13, 14 as the youngest, and then go up from there. There are some games that you can play as a family and help guide smaller children to be able to play, but most of these games are centered for adults and for older teenagers. Not all of them, but the majority of them are very complex. The rules consisting of anywhere from 10 to 30 pages of rules, sometimes more. Some games take an hour, some take 8 hours, to play through. And again, that level of tactics and real strategy going into the game, if you want to win, is really real and apparent in every game. So I think that's the biggest factor that separates the classic board games and what we call designer board games.
And that kind of goes into my next question of what are some stigmas that we've seen associated with board games? Because, like I said, my husband is not very big into playing board games because he thinks that, it's just for children and that it wouldn't be fun. So what would you say are some big stigmas you see associated with board games?
Right, and and I was definitely part of that stigma before I really sat down and played board games and really realized what they were. And maybe it's because of the board game that I started with. I didn't get a bad taste in my mouth for the hobby. And again, I played with people that I enjoyed being around too, on top of it, which I think is really important. Uh, but I think that the biggest stigma is that there are certain types of people that play the game. And I think that comes from games like Magic the Gathering, the card game,
Oh, yeah,
gets kind of rolled into our hobby. And a lot of people think it's, maybe an overweight, middle-aged man, that has no life, that spends all of his money on cards and just goes to these tournaments, smells bad. Those are real stigmas that are associated with our hobby. And it's just not true. I mean, it's just not anymore. Because there was a time period where video gaming players were looked the same way. PC gamers and stuff, they were looked at as overweight men that were in their mom's basement, never made anything of their life, and just, was doing gaming and stuff like that. And it's just simply not true anymore. And that's because that these designer games reach so many different people with so many different themes, and they really use your brain. And they are such a great educational tool for teenagers to learn how to do economics, trading, resource management, financial accountability. I mean, these games are just so great when it comes to teaching people how to really be open-minded, use critical thinking, and the stigma that goes with gaming and that it's just for kids is, again, it can be, but for a family to be able to engage with their children and show them these games and be like, okay, this is the concept that you're going to have to collect and gather these resources to save to be able to pay for these things, which are going to turn into points. Just that concept alone, which is a very generalized concept, but that's in so many of these games, and that teaches kids so many different good things to have in their life, to apply. Another big stigma is that the hobby itself is very exclusive, where it's really hard for people to jump into because it's smaller. And that's just simply not the case anymore. The millennial generation has just taken a hold of this hobby and just started spreading it everywhere, especially in the US and in Europe. Really, in any major city or even smaller cities, you can go in Europe, China, Japan, Australia, Canada, United States, Mexico. You could go into any major city and find a gaming cafe that's just for board games. It's becoming that big worldwide. And I have been able to meet so many people from so many different walks of life and so many different countries. I engage regularly with people from Japan, and I've been able to learn so much about different cultures and how these games have applied to their lives. And again, it's people from engineers to accountants to doctors to nurses to construction workers. Everyone's playing, and they all equally love it for the same reason, that it's just the level of enjoyment to be able to have with a group of people.
Yeah. And I do want to mention too that board games, there are so many out there too for individual people. So if you actually don't have friends or family or people to play with, there are a ton out there that are just like these that you can play individualized as well, which is great. Yeah. So
most of the games now, they've realized that solo campaigns or solo games are a necessity to sell games.
Yeah.
Because for a long time they didn't have a lot of two-player games, and they realized, well, a lot of people aren't buying games because they only have two people. And now they've realized, well, a lot of people are by themselves, or they want to be able to play some of these games, they just don't have a group. And they've made most games with some sort of variant that includes solo play.
Yeah, so awesome. And really, I only have one question left is, what is your favorite thing about board games? Or maybe even tell me one of your favorite type of board games that you have.
My favorite type of board games typically is a fantasy theme, like a D&D theme. So Dungeons and Dragons, you know, most people know of, and that type of theme really appeals to me. So I like card games, what we call deck building, which is where you're building a deck of cards to get points and defeat things in different ways. And everyone's got the same opportunity to buy cards. It's just you're buying cards to build a strategy that's unique to you. And I like that theme of the fantasy kind of dungeon theme. So those are typically my favorite games. I also really like resource management games where you're having to gather all these types of different resources to change in to get other resources to then change in to get points. And it's just whoever gets the most points in the end wins. I really like those games because I think that's something that we apply in our daily lives.
Right.
So what attracts me most to the hobby is the artwork. I do a lot of sketching and stuff, and so I really appreciate artwork. And some of these games, the artwork on them is just amazing. And most of it is done by hand, and then reprinted, of course. But most of it's done by hand, and I know a couple of the artists that do them. And there's so much time and effort in the art that goes into these games, and it's amazing to look at.
Is there anything else you would like to add about board games that we haven't mentioned?
Really, you know, if you want more information, you know, and to really see games played online by guys that have played these types of games professionally, because there's actually professional tournaments for some of these games and stuff like that. The Dice Tower is a good resource. I'm telling you from my own personal view, these guys do it for a living, and they have a really good channel, good group of guys. They've been doing it since the 80s, so they're a little bit older, but they've got a lot of experience. A good show to watch on YouTube also would be Tabletop with the actor Will Wheaton, and he shows some playthroughs and everything with a lot of celebrities from YouTube and from just films, and really shows like how this hobby calls to so many different people of walks of life. And those are some good resources. If you want a good place to go and maybe access a store, Miniature Market is a really good one that is in the United States. Another good resource is the Game Foundry Room. I believe that's in Great Britain. So one for over in Europe. Those are two good places to look if you want to start actually buying games.
And I do just want to mention too, for my Indian audience, unfortunately, you know, I haven't been able to find a lot of locations in India that sells board games. However, there are some bookstores that I found, and even Amazon India, if you go there. One board game that I found is Code Names, but I've also seen Catan, and Catan is a very famous board game. We've played it. So if you're really interested, I know that Catan is available in India, and hopefully I'm sure at some of the stores that he said in the US or in Great Britain, they may deliver internationally. They are pricier. Some of the board games are on the pricier side, but you know, they're lifelong. They're definitely fun. So if you really are interested, then I'm sure there's some way for you to access these games. But those are the two that I found on Amazon that are available currently in India. All right, guys, I think that's all the questions we have for you today. I really hope that we were able to answer them clearly. If you have any other questions or that you'd like us to answer, just let me know in the description box below. But thank you so much, Lance, for being here in my video and for answering these questions for me.
Yeah, no problem.
Yep.
Anything to grow the hobby, because it's an amazing hobby.
So now that you guys know that one of my favorite hobbies is to play board games, I thought it would be a great idea to show you what a typical board game store looks like. And the one I'm going to today is in Lansing, Michigan, and it is the board game store that my sister and her partner likes to go to majority of the time to get their games. So I'm excited to show you guys what it looks like. We are here at my sister's favorite board game place, or the one they get most of their board games at because it's closest to home in Lansing, Michigan. And it is called Summit Comics and Games. There are a ton of people in there, so I'm not really going to be talking, but I'll just quickly show you what the shop looks like and the type of board games they have. So I hope you guys enjoy. Are the newer games up in the front?
Yep, new releases right here, and kind of in
Well, I know Catan you can get in India. I've seen them have Catan, actually, on Amazon. So this is probably only one of the ones I've really found in India that you can get. So it looks like when you first come in, all of the newer releases or newer games are in the front.
Thank you very much.
So that's basically it, guys. So this game store, most of the games are in the front. They don't just do game boards, they also have comics and other things in the back, but still a lot of awesome games, a lot of game boards here. And again, you can find a lot of these little shops in a lot of different towns that you go to here in the US. Oh, hope you guys enjoyed. Alright guys, so that was it. I do want to mention that that board game store was a little bit smaller than some other ones. You'll find some that can be bigger, some that are smaller. Sometimes you'll just find board games that just have board games, or stores like this that have both board games and models, like miniatures, things like that. So but they are actually expanding on their store. They're having a whole nother side of the store open up, so they are definitely expanding. But I did want to show you, my sister did end up getting 2 different games. They got this one. It's beautiful decorations, but it's a tile game, looks like a lot of fun. And then there's this one called Fairy Tale Inn. And it's kind of like a hybrid game. It's definitely different. If you know anything about Connect 4, kind of looks like something like that. But yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. We're excited to try these out this next week. But yeah, I had a great time, and I love checking out board game stores when I get an opportunity. It's so much fun. If you guys ever get a chance when you're in the US, I would highly recommend checking out the cities that you are in for board game stores and checking them out. Alright guys, so that'll do it for the video. I really hope you guys learned something new today, and I hope you really enjoyed it. I love this hobby. It is so much fun, and I hope it's something that you guys might be interested in too. But if you guys did like this video, then please give me a thumbs up, because it really helps to support my channel, and hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to hit the notification bell, because it just helps to notify you every time I post a new video. Hope to see you guys in my next one. Bye!